Hey, what's up, everybody? I just wanted to do this real quick before the actual podcast started. I goofed. I made a big old goof. And although there's two microphones in the video, they were way too close together, and I had no way to separate them. So to have the audio from both mics, it just sounded a little weird. So luckily, my voice is kind of loud enough to where Veronica's microphone could pick me up pretty well. So the only audio in the video is going to be from her microphone and not both of them. So if I sound a little distant or not as clear as her, that's why. But hopefully you can still hear me pretty well. I think you can. And also, as you can tell, I have a little bit of a cold. I've been drinking plenty of juice, as you'll see through the video, and I cough a little bit, and I apologize for that, but I can't really help it. But that being said, I think this is a good podcast. I really enjoyed it. I think it was a lot of fun. And, I hope you guys enjoy listening to Veronica. She's got a lot of knowledge, a lot of advice. We talked about many things. Everything from her going into her fourth year, the new Japanese education curriculum starting next school year, religion. We talked about a lot, and I hope you enjoy listening to it. But I just wanted to throw this at the beginning to clarify why I sound so far away and why she's so crystal clear. It was my mistake. I goofed with the microphones. I'm still working on figuring all this stuff out. But that being said, I hope you enjoy the video, and let me know what you think. Hey everybody, welcome back to another podcast. I have today with me the wonderful, the great, the life-saving Veronica here from my town. She comes from everywhere in the United States, but she calls Texas her home.
Yeah.
And she's starting her fourth year. And so let's get into that, I guess. First of all, thanks. Welcome to being on the podcast.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Yeah. Actually, first of all, congrats on being an aunt. I know we've talked about it.
Yes.
But you just got
oh
that
my
news.
gosh. Oh, I'm so excited.
Yeah. And it's your middle sister?
Yes, my middle sister. She's actually, both her and her husband were the first to get married in the families.
Mm-hmm.
They're the only ones married in our families. So first grandchild, first niece or nephew for everybody. So
wow, that's awesome.
Pretty
That's
exciting.
Super exciting, yeah.
Real exciting.
Jumping into the jet life, since that's what I kind of focus on this. I'll knock the easy question out of the way.
Okay.
Why did you want to do jet?
Okay. It's always, I think, one of the most difficult questions we get asked.
It's easy and difficult.
It is easy, a little bit of both. So, I was a little bit of a nerd growing up. I did video games and anime. So, when I first started watching anime and things like that, I enjoyed listening to the subtitled versions, and I was like, you know what, I'd kind of like to read, watch without reading. Yeah. So I really wanted to learn Japanese, but I couldn't study till college. And it was the same time I found out about JET. My dad was military, but we never got to live overseas. Right. So I was like, I need to find a way to combine those two. So when I found out about the JET program, I'm like, that sounds like a lot of fun. I want to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. And interestingly enough, something that always blows my mind that, again, we have talked about numerous times. But with JET, you were an alternate. You were not shortlisted. I was,
yeah.
Which I think for a lot would be super stressful. You want to walk me through that?
I think it was even more stressful than you might think. So when I first got my response back from my consulate, there was a mix-up, actually. I was waiting for the results of my interview, and I got my email saying, congratulations, you're on the short list for the JET program. And I was like, that's cool, oh my God. And they're like, please fill out the additional forms and that kind of thing. So I was like, okay, I look at the forms, and they're all alternate forms. And so I was like, wait a minute. So I'm an alternate or a short list? Like, which one?
Yeah, that's
so
scary.
When I contacted the consulate, they were like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. We had a mix-up, and maybe 20, 30 people got the wrong email. And I was like, oh, geez. So they told me, you're actually an alternate. I was like, oh, okay.
That's like a gut punch in the half.
Oh, so much. Yeah, it hurt. But I was like, it's still, at the same time, I was consoling myself, like, you know what? It's not a no. That's the big thing. Yeah. It wasn't a flat-out no. So I think it was maybe a month and a half later that I finally got the call telling me, hey, if you're still interested, we got a job for you. Oh. And I was like, sure. By that time, I had already started looking for other work, teaching and that kind of thing. But when I got that call, I was like, well, I'm going to Japan.
Yeah, I think if I remember our last conversation correctly, you said you had something, or you were talking with Funimation. Is that right?
I wanted to. I had applied to be one of their licensors.
Yeah.
Because they were looking for people who had knowledge of Japanese culture, and I was like, hey, that my major was Japanese. That should work. And I sent in that application, but then like I think maybe a week later, a job for a translator opened up.
Oh,
and I was
that
like,
was it.
oh. And I was like, but that was at the same time that I had gotten the call back from Jet. And so I was like, ooh, but Jet, no,
Yeah.
Jet.
Yeah, it's hard to turn down the jet option, especially in your situation.
Yeah.
But that being said, with alternate, you've also talked about what some people may not know is when you do jet, you come and you have to do orientation in Tokyo. You still did that, but by yourself?
If you could call it that.
Yeah.
I was in the less known about group C.
Yeah.
So there was a group of maybe, there wasn't that many of us. It was maybe a little over 100 to 200 people.
All right.
And we stayed at the same hotel and everything. When we got to the hotel, we had our dinner reception of welcome to Japan. But when it came time to break into groups, as far as like, okay, let's get together in your prefectures.
Yeah.
I go and stand at the Shimane group, and it's just me sitting there, and I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
So I was the only alternate to come that year.
Wow.
And it just so happened that I arrived in Japan the same time as that Shimane orientation you went to.
Oh, yeah?
So I missed that. I missed, like, my original orientation was only a day instead of 2 days. It was super condensed, super, like, I really don't even remember very much of it.
Wow.
Coming to Shimane, it was just me and this other prefecture representative guy who didn't speak very much Japanese or English, and my Japanese wasn't very confident yet, so we didn't talk very much.
Wow.
And I came, met my supervisor and another lady from town, met Amanda it was the same day or the next day.
Yeah.
And really from my year of Jets, Amanda was the only one I knew until November when we had the big conference.
Yeah. Well, and that's a perfect setup for me, because the next thing I was going to say is Amanda, my predecessor, was also just starting when you came here. So you were both
same year.
First, like, both getting started. What was that like to kind of dive in head first?
It was interesting, although I guess for me it was a little bit lucky because in a way Amanda was slightly my senpai still, because she had been in town for maybe 2 or 3 weeks before I had gotten there. So she actually kind of had already started getting into the office routine.
Okay.
She was the one contacting me beforehand about, hey, we're going to try and set up your internet. We've got your car situated. Here are some options for cell phones and things. So that helped make the transition very smooth. It was still chaotic, but more smooth than it probably would have been.
Right.
So I had Amanda helping me out with a lot of that. But then after that point, once we were both settled, we just kind of had to figure things out on our own.
Yeah, just trial and error.
Trial and error, yeah.
Which has worked out for me great, because as to clarify, if you don't know senpai, it's just somebody old. No, it's fine. Someone, I would say, older, who's kind of like just kind of your guide who helps
just
you.
More experienced in just some area.
In it's very common in school here that everyone has a senpai and everything like that, so it's a common phrase used. But Veronica would be my senpai. She helped me with everything from getting my phone, setting up my apartment, getting a TV with me, taking me everywhere. She's been an absolute lifesaver. So that's some clarification on senpai.
So, senpai and kohai. You're my kohai.
Yes, and it's been fantastic. Let's see what else to talk about. With Amanda, so Amanda, and I mean, we know where she's from. I don't really feel comfortable throwing that out there.
Right.
But you, as I said, are from all around.
A little bit.
Predominantly Texas.
Right. My dad was in the military for about 23 years.
Yeah.
So because of his job description line of work, we moved every 3 years since I was born. Wow. So I went to, I think I counted 6 or 7 schools growing up before I went to college. But through the course of things, since my parents were both from Texas, anytime they could, they would try to get stationed back in Texas again. So I think we moved in and out of Texas maybe 3 times. The last being when my dad retired there. So predominantly Texas, but we've lived in Ohio and California and Virginia and
so
all over.
you've seen a lot of things.
Yeah,
Just never
all
overseas.
over. Yeah.
But something that again, we've talked about a lot of this, but it's still fun to talk about.
Yeah.
With Texas being your predominant home, and Texas was where you were living before you came here.
Right.
Snow. Talk about the snow.
Oh, the
Because
snow.
me being from Indiana, I at least had experience with snow, and you did in some other places. But
I did.
being used to Texas,
right when I went to high school, we were living in Nebraska at the time, so I was not unfamiliar with snow. Like I've had experiences with snow, but that first winter, I'll tell you. It was very, I mean, I still think snow is very beautiful to look at, but I think that kind of joy and excitement died within like the first 2 or 3 days.
It goes away real quick.
Yeah, it was like super fast. And so I remember I took plenty of pictures. I was posting pictures and videos to Facebook to show my family and like, look, it's snowing and I'm going to have a white Christmas and all of that. And got a lot of jealous like responses back of, oh, you're so lucky. But oh my gosh, it was incredibly cold. It was definitely an adventure.
Yeah, I think that's the big thing that I've tried to explain to some family back home, and you and I have talked about, is with no insulation or central heating
that's what's killer.
Is, you're used to coming home from being in the cold and getting into a warm house.
Right.
But you don't. It takes a while for your apartment to get warmed up. I have my small heater. It's been running all morning.
Right.
And it just now hit 20 degrees Celsius, which is maybe 70 degrees.
Somewhere around there,
Somewhere around there. So, yeah, it's taken all morning to get that warm. And it's a struggle.
It's tough, especially coming back to the apartment. I think the lowest, when I turned my heater on, I think the lowest I've had it read the room is maybe 4 degrees. Yeah. Is the lowest that I've gotten.
I think my lowest was maybe 5.
Yeah.
But I could also see my breath. And I was like, that's not good if I can see my breath.
That's not normal in your head. Just even going from, because like you, I've got my room closed off. Yeah. So it's the bedroom, kitchen area that's warm. And then the moment you step out to go to the bathroom or shower, your breath comes out and it's a gauntlet because it's too cold.
That's the thing is, I mean, I'm obviously filming this in my apartment, but people don't know. Right over here, there's a door that takes you to my front door, my shower, my bathroom. And I have to go out there in the morning to take a shower or use the restroom. And it is a quick way to wake up.
Oh, yeah.
It's very tough. The other thing I think that's difficult to deal with the snow is just like, I don't know. To me, it seems like they take care of the roads differently. Like
they do. Well, for this area in particular, again, they're so used to it. Yeah. Like they're usually pretty good about cleaning the main roads off.
Right.
Side roads, you're gonna still get snow. Yeah, you're gonna struggle a little bit. But the main roads, at least, they know those are heavily trafficked, so they'll clean those off really quick.
Yeah.
I think but it's still a bit scary. I think driving for me, especially because when I learned to drive, there was a little bit of snow, but nothing like this. Yeah. So, driving can be pretty scary. Yeah. Too.
Driving is. There are moments when I'm terrified to drive. Like you said, on side roads or back roads. Yeah. They're not very clear, and even if you go slow, you just feel like you don't have any control. I haven't slid much. I think I told you I've slid once, but that was because I was coming down a hill. Yeah. And I mean, there was no way. I had
a similar experience where I was coming down a hill, heading to town, and car just slid. It just lost control of the car, and kind of slid forward for a bit, and then about partway through, it went sideways. And I was like, thank God there's no cars coming. Yeah. But eventually, like, the front of my car just hit a snowbank on the side of the road to stop. Wow. So I had to kind of like back out and keep going. But you do get a little bit of like a post-traumatic with that kind of thing. Because like even now when I come, because it's on the way to town. So when I pass through that area, I'm like, and this is where I skidded. Yeah. This is where This is where I slipped.
Absolutely. It's, I don't know, it's hard to explain unless you're here, but it really is just like we're in the mountains and we get a lot of snow and you just kind of deal with it.
It kind of ends up also boiling down to like, do I really need to go to town?
Yeah.
Do I really want to go to the mall?
Yeah, you really put into perspective stuff that you need to do or want to do.
Yeah, that makes winter a little bit tough as far as getting out and about. You do feel a little bit of like that closed in hermit life.
Oh yeah.
Of like,
I'm definitely starting to get cabin fever.
Yeah.
Because I'm just in here all the time at this point.
Yeah.
Talking about driving and doing stuff, something that I think is interesting that maybe a lot of people back in America may not know. Religion. So you are Christian, I feel safe to say.
Catholic, yeah.
Catholic, yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay. And there is a church that is an hour and a half?
Yeah, well, both towns have one Catholic church in them. So either way I go, it'll take about an hour. It just depends on which town I want to. But predominantly, I go to Matsue for church on Sunday.
So, but like I guess this is something we haven't really talked about. What's church like in Japan?
It's actually really cool, really interesting.
Yeah.
Because it's in a bigger-ish town for our area.
Yeah.
Because I think actually Matsue is our capital city for our prefecture. So I go to church in our capital, and they're definitely more aware of the foreigner presence there. Mm-hmm. So when I go to church, it's quite obvious that I'm the foreigner in the congregation, but they have like their announcement, or not really announcement, it's a pamphlet that has the readings for that day and some in-between prayers. They're usually printed there in Japanese, and they have like a big and a small one, but then they also have one printed in English for foreigners. So I get to take that and go sit down so that when we get to the readings, I can at least read and understand what the readings are. I noticed like just cultural differences, which is really interesting because one big thing is that most churches back home, when it comes time for doing the Eucharist, you have the Eucharist and the blood, so body and blood of Jesus Christ kind of thing. But here in Japan, they only do the Eucharist. They don't do the wine. Because of that, usually it's the shared cup, and that's a big no in this culture. So they don't do that. Same thing with holding hands during one of the prayers. They don't hold hands here. So instead, we're just all kind of, in our own prayer. And same thing with, giving sign of peace. They don't shake. Shaking hands is not a Japanese thing. So they don't shake hands. Instead, we bow to each other. And we don't kneel during the prayers. We're standing because that's more reverent than sitting. And they don't kneel here like we do back home. So, like, things like that, it was different and it was interesting. I'm actually also very grateful. We just recently got a new priest. The previous priest that was our priest for our church, he was really nice, very sweet. He tried his best. He didn't know very much English, but he would still reside over the English Mass whenever we had English Mass, which is only once a month. But the new priest we have has a little bit more English. So even during the Japanese Mass, he does everything in Japanese. But then when it gets to his reflection on the readings, he goes through and does it in Japanese. And then he'll take maybe 2 or 3 minutes and translate what he said into English to his best ability.
That's awesome.
So he'll give like a small summary of what he said in English. And so for me, I just really appreciate that a lot.
Yeah, that's really cool. I guess, obviously they do it in Japanese, as you just said, but something that I was wondering is somebody who, grew up in a Catholic school, an elementary school, do they do the Latin stuff? Do they do anything like
I don't think they do. No, not many of the Latin prayer. It's the same prayer, just translated into Japanese. Right. But I don't believe... actually, there might be, at least with Ie Cristo, I think sometimes they might say some form of like the Kyrie eleison, but not usually. No.
I'll say, because language is something that Amano Sensei and I have been talking about. For people who don't know Amano Sensei, that's who I work with at the middle school. But I guess it's something I never thought about. Oh yeah, he's fantastic. I would love to have him on here sometime. I'm going to work for that in the future.
That's awesome.
But I guess, because Latin would be easier to do if you speak English, because they kind of come from the same background.
Well,
I guess English.
yeah,
comes
English
from
has
Latin.
roots in Latin.
Yeah, whereas Japanese, Japanese, Chinese, Korean, any of those languages don't stem from Latin at all. So it would be very difficult for them to try to do Latin. So I was kind of curious if they tried Latin or if they just called it quits.
Yeah, they do like maybe one or two words here now, and even with like Jesus, it's more I think the Latin pronunciation because it's Iesu Cristo instead of Jesus Christ.
Right.
So they do a little bit with certain words, but not very many.
Yeah, well, that's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I mean, to continue on the topic of language that we've talked about a lot, it's just funny how many Japanese words are taken. So if people don't know, Japanese has 3 main alphabets. There's kanji, hiragana, and katakana. And all of the katakana is mainly for words that are in other languages.
Foreign words,
that they adapt to English, or to Japanese rather. A common one, I guess a common one would be like terebi for television.
Terebi, video for video.
Yeah, there's just a bunch that they take, and it's actually becoming. My friend who visited Tokyo said you start to see a lot more words that they have Japanese words for, but they just start saying in katakana for fun.
Yeah.
But I guess the funny thing to me, like you were saying there with the Latin, is just the lack of knowledge on where those words come from.
Yeah, that's you see it mostly with our kids, and it's just hilarious for them to realize, because especially when they're little, there's that very common misconception that anything pronounced in katakana is English.
Yeah.
And so whenever we get to class and we get to a certain word, and I ask them, what is this in English? They give me the katakana, and I'm like, nope, that's not English.
I think the most common one that everyone experiences that we've talked about is pan. Pan. So pan is Portuguese for bread. Yeah,
Portuguese, Spanish, and French.
Yeah, but every student thinks that it's the English reading for bread. And it's not. And it's always a fun moment in class to talk about bread and to get into that.
It's hilarious.
I guess talking about funny moments. So as I said, you're going on your 4th year, which I'll dive more into that later. But what are some funny moments that you remember in your years here? Because I'm sure you've had a bunch.
I have had quite a few. I actually had one just the other day in class, but I don't know whether it would be too embarrassing if somehow it got too, because the way, that's the thing with small towns. Like, you post something on Facebook, and then all of a sudden a coworker that I don't have on Facebook is like, oh, I heard you did this weekend, and I'm like,
it's crazy
how did you know?
Stuff gets around.
So but most of my stories, I've actually been keeping a journal of that kind of thing on a Word document. I'll go into my computer during downtime, because we have plenty of downtime.
Yes.
And if something in particular happened during class or at school that day, I'll just like open a Word document, and I end up making like a mini short story. You know, I'll put like a funny title and just go into this story of what happened in class. Yeah. So I've been doing that. I think my favorite, though, that I always kind of go back to my own mind is when I first arrived in Izumo. When I first arrived, like I said, it was my supervisor, and she had brought another woman who works in the same, like, kind of not office, but she works for the town as well. Only she did live in California for a bit, so she has really good English. You've met her before, Minamoto-san. Yeah. And so it was the two of them. They were, holding a sign, waiting for me, and I don't remember 100% like who started the exchange. I remember she approached and was kind of like, hello, welcome. My name is, doing the introduction. She was like, oh, by the way, I want to ask, do you speak Japanese? And if I'm remembering correctly, I responded back to her, yeah, and I went in Japanese. I went, yes, I studied Japanese in college. And my supervisor's standing right next to her, and she's just like, oh, thank God. She's like, thank God. Like, she, like, practically collapsed. Like, oh, my God. Relief on her face.
That's awesome.
That I could speak some Japanese, and it's just hilarious. Yeah. But it's one of my favorite stories.
Yeah, that's very funny. I think, it's funny that you mentioned that, because I've realized, maybe not for you, but it's, in my case, it happens all the time. When you tell someone here that you know Japanese, they either think that you know very minimal or that you're completely fluent.
There's no gray area.
There's no gray area.
There is no such thing as a gray area. So, like, most of the people I work with, I think are working on the assumption that I'm completely fluent.
Yes, absolutely.
And I'm like, no, there's still words I don't know. There's many words I don't know.
Yes.
But they'll just kind of go at me, talk like no.
Million words a minute.
Yeah, they just kind of go, and I'm like, I got like maybe 20% of that.
Yeah. My students have gotten better. My students were the ones that right from the get go, once they heard me say one thing in Japanese, they're like, "Oh, he's fluent," and they would speak to me a million words a minute. But my students have started to slow down. But the other teachers now, that they assume that I can just flip anything. The worst for me, this happened just the other day. I'm not going to say the school, but it was at an elementary school.
Yeah.
And I appreciate that she wants to do this, but the kids were playing kind of like charades, essentially.
Okay.
They would act stuff out, so there was the options of charades or like really old kanji that no one really knows anymore, and they were trying to guess what the things were, and they're supposed to say them in English. The thing was I didn't know what these kids had prepared. They had done this on their own time. So when the kids went to answer in English but didn't know the English word, she was like, "Oh, ask Cameron, he'll tell you." And I was like, I can't just, like, I don't know these things.
Right.
And there was about 4 or 5 words that the kids said where I had no idea what they were.
Yeah.
And thankfully there was another teacher there who knew those words in English for some reason.
Yeah.
And so he told them the English, and I was like,
good.
wow, this makes me look... The best part about it were there were parents there too.
Oh, jeez.
So I was like, I just look like a complete idiot in front of all of these parents. But I had no warning, no which I think is another thing about this job that people don't realize. Sometimes you do not get any heads up. Sometimes you just walk into your school and they're like, by the way, this is happening today.
Yeah.
I hope you're ready. And you're like, well... I'm not.
Yeah, I think once it may be something with like just they need time to getting used to contacting you and that kind of, because I know for me it doesn't always happen. Like, I've been talking with one of my homeroom teachers in elementary, and he's been prepping me on observation days. So usually the teachers will come to me and say, hey, by the way, on this date we've got observation, or this, that, and the other. I did have one instance where I think it was that same day I got a call in the office phone from my next school saying, there's no 6th grade today, so we need you to do a double lesson for 5th grade. Ooh. And I was like, why can't I just have that period off? But it was like real spur of the moment. I was like, geez, what am I going to do? So I had to have like my bag of tricks and just be like, okay, we're going to play this game then for the rest of the period.
Observations normally aren't bad. They'll normally just tell me like a week in advance, or if they have my contact information, they'll get a hold of me. Yeah. But the worst is just not knowing. So for example, that class was 3rd and 4th grade. Oh, okay. Which I don't normally do 3rd and 4th grade. Right, we don't.
Well, right now we don't.
Right now we don't. That's a different topic. Yeah. But so they just thrown that on me as I walked in, like, oh, by the way, can you do 3rd and 4th grade today because 5th and 6th are out with influenza? Yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, sure, no problem. And then, come to find out, it was a big shebang that I was unprepared for. Right. Which was, I mean, it was fun. It was fine, other than looking like a buffoon, but.
Yeah, no, that it is. It's especially with the kid. I think that's my favorite is the little kids. Oh. You speak a little bit of Japanese and they just go off on you because they're like, "Oh, cool, you understand what I'm saying?" Yeah, and they just like start going a mile a minute, and it's just hilarious to see the little kids act that way.
Yeah, they get really excited when they realize that you can speak.
What has been your reaction to like people when they tell you tell them that you speak Japanese?
I would say mixed reactions. I would say a very common one is kind of like a hesitant, like, well, how much do you know? Yeah. And then even then, they don't really care. They're just like, I'm still going to talk to you really, really fast. Yeah. The other reaction is kind of like, well, why? Why do you know Japanese?
Yeah, I get the same thing, and it's a mixture of like wonder of like why, and then I've gotten some people that are like amazed that I wanted to learn Japanese in the first place, because it's understandable that English is becoming a more mainstream global language, but for something I guess to other people, they're like, but why like so many other languages, why Japanese? Yeah. And so I've gotten mixed as well, kind of
Yeah.
like how much and like thank you and but why.
Yeah. Well, because to put it in perspective, surely everyone knows, but just in case you don't, this is the only country that speaks Japanese.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
with the exception of kanji. Kanji can be applied to Chinese, but the readings are like it's
Right.
not exactly the same.
The meaning might be the same.
Right. Like if
but
you translate it to English, you're probably going to get a similar meaning.
maybe.
But the readings are completely different,
Yeah.
and everything's different in that
Yeah.
aspect. So when you say you're learning Japanese to somebody who lives in Japan, they're very confused because
Right.
Japan, if you're from America, Japan's the size of California. This is not a
Yeah,
large place.
no.
Like that's mind-blowing to me and to other people. So when you tell this country that, oh yeah, I live in America, but I decided to study your language,
Right.
it's very confusing to them.
Yeah, especially with things when you get options like Spanish, which
Yeah.
can be adapted to many countries, and French is
Yeah.
the same. So, like, why Japanese?
Yeah, it's very it's
I like it.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the thing that blows their mind the most is that people enjoy Japanese.
Yeah.
Because I think they're aware that it's difficult. And so yeah, for someone to enjoy studying it or want to study it,
Yeah.
it's really belittling.
Yeah.
Not belittling. It's really bewildering. It's very
Yeah.
confusing.
Yeah, definitely.
But no, yeah, I would say out of everyone who's at least asked me if I study Japanese, 90% ask why.
Yeah.
And it's like always the second question. And yeah, it's really interesting the sense of amazement that they get from it.
Yeah.
Going into the fourth year, I do want to talk about
yeah.
that because I think that's a very amazing thing. I don't think people
Yeah.
realize the dedication that takes. But a simple question, no, not simple, it's going to be difficult, but an easy starting question for me.
Okay.
Do you feel the same? Do you still love this place as much as you did when you got here?
I do, actually. I mean, definitely, it still has changed a little bit to where I'm sure you felt the same way, or still maybe feel the same way of just this. It's an amazing experience.
Yeah.
It's like you have a little bit of that wonder and that awe of living in a foreign country.
Yeah.
And so that first year was just amazing of like, oh my gosh, doing this experience and that experience.
It's
and,
very much like a honeymoon.
yeah,
phase.
going here and there, but like at this point, almost 3 years, gonna start my fourth year in August. It's still a little bit of wonder. Like it's a cool concept that I'm living in a foreign country. There's still things that I know that I want to learn.
Yeah.
But I still feel like, I love this place. I love where I've been placed. I loved being here, which is why I've stayed as long as I have.
Yeah.
And I think it's something that's usually a common situation for people who get art prefecture. They tend to stay long because it's just an amazing community. It's beautiful.
Yeah,
Beautiful
which
scenery.
is really funny though, because you have to do. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but we do an opinion exchange to kind of just talk about like how we like our job, our life here, and yada yada.
Yeah.
But one of the questions they asked was, "What was your reaction when you figured out like you were going to live in this prefecture in your town?" And I don't think anybody knew of this prefecture. Like out of our opinion exchange, I'm not sure about the other ones, but the people that were at ours, no one knew about.
Never heard of
Shimane.
it. Yeah.
So
I
it's
mean,
funny how much people love it.
Yeah, if you ask anybody like what they know about Japan, most often than not you'll hear Hiroshima, Tokyo, Kyoto, maybe Okinawa, if they know that.
Yeah.
And that's the gist of what people know. And so, but I think what was funny for me, it was a little bit nerve-wracking, was that not even people in Japan know where Shimane is.
No,
and
it's really weird.
yeah, so like if you talk to other people, I think even when I first found out, when I got my letter of placement, this is where you're going, I did what everybody did. I went to Google, looked it up, tried to look up the map. I think I did a virtual driving tour of your side of town, actually.
Hey-o.
It wasn't my side, it was your side. And I was looking through it, and I was like, what is this place? Oh my goodness. But I even went to my college professors for Japanese and was telling them, I got accepted, and they congratulate me, and they're like, so where are you going? And I'm like, Shimane. And they're like, where's that? They're like, where's Shimane? So I'm like, that's not comforting.
Yeah, and just to clarify for people who think maybe it's because they were a college professor and hadn't been in Japan for a while.
No,
it's definitely not the case. When I flew back from Christmas and I landed in Tokyo, I got interviewed for, I believe, a YouTube show. I don't think it was actual cable
Okay.
TV. But they asked me, like, where I was going. Well, they asked me what I was doing, and I said I was an ALT. And they asked me where I was going, and I said Shimane. And they were like, where? And so I was like, I said it again, because at this point, I knew I hadn't said it wrong. I'd been living here for half a year.
Right.
And I said it again. I said Shimane, Ken. And they were like, where? And I was like, by Hiroshima. And they were like, oh, okay. And I was like, you still don't know where it's at, but you're acting like you do right now. So yeah, it's because I think we are the second least populated. Is that right?
Yes.
It's something like, so us and the prefecture next to us, Totori? Is that
Totori,
it?
yeah.
Yeah, we're the two smallest prefectures in Japan.
Yeah.
So I forget which one's the smallest and which one's the second smallest, but regardless.
Totori is, I think,
the smallest?
just by square kilometer. It's
okay.
physically smaller than us.
Gotcha.
Because we were stretched out a little bit.
Yeah, but no one knows where this is at.
Nope.
The other, you were talking about it, and I wanted to bring it up. I think I've mentioned it before, but to clarify too, the towns. When she said she was looking at my town, that's because we literally are two towns that came together, like not too long ago.
It wasn't. It was. I think even before I had come. I know it's less. It's around about maybe 20 years.
Yeah.
Not even that much, maybe. Yeah. They recently joined together to become Okuizumo.
Yeah. So my area is Nita, and yours is
Yokota.
Yeah, and for me to get to her side, it's like a 15-minute drive.
Yeah,
maybe.
about 15, 20 minutes.
When there's no snow.
Right.
To clarify, when there's no snow and it's clear, it's about that long of a drive.
Exactly.
So that's what we mean by our town, which is a lovely town. Please come visit.
It's beautiful.
Please do.
Beautiful mountains.
Let's see. Oh, another thing I want to talk about that you kind of mentioned as you approach your fourth year, and as I approach my second. It's a new school system, or like not school system, but new curriculum. We're gonna have to teach third and fourth grade.
We're getting more classes, and actually, just maybe a little bit boring, but your side of town, the Nita area has more schools than the Yokota area does. So a while back, they had started a 3-year rotation for my job in which we switch out schools. So I essentially adopt one of your schools in my rotation, and I alternate between 3 schools each year.
Yeah.
So I'm actually, that's the other kind of interesting thing for me, because it's like, oh, you're going back to this school again. And I'm like, oh, that was my first school when I got here.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of it is in preparation for the 2020 Olympics. They want the kids, and Japan in general wants to increase their population's knowledge of English and their English ability.
Yeah.
So in an attempt for that, they decided to add 3rd and 4th grade into the English rotation. So I think they're not going to have as many lessons as 5th and 6th grade, and 5th and 6th grade is going to get more. But they're throwing that into the rotation now. So we have 3rd through 6th grade at our elementary schools this year. Or it'll start in April with the new school year.
Yeah, which I don't know what I've talked about on here, not anymore. But to clarify, graduation is in March here, so the school year is different here than it is back in America and other places, so that's why it's starting at that time. It's not weird for us, it's just weird for you.
Yeah.
But you and I have also talked about, which I don't know if we've heard any more on, but the idea of another ALT being put in our town, because right now we're the only two, and we don't do high school. Someone comes in to do our high school for us. But there's been talks about
I think it was mostly just passing comment that they should probably think about it.
Yeah.
Because my main concern is that for a normal day for us, we get split between 2 schools for our elementary.
Yeah.
We have the morning where we're at that school for 4 periods, and then our afternoon school is only 2 periods. And my mind automatically went to, well, what about that afternoon school? We have 4 classes to teach and only 2 periods.
Yeah.
That's not going to work. It physically does not, time-wise doesn't work.
Yeah.
But for me, at least, I already know what my new schedule is for next year. Our supervisor printed that out for me.
Must be nice.
Well, no, because I think it's a little bit of a laziness, and that he wanted.
Yeah. You told me about.
He wanted to get away with printing my whole year and just be like, "Here you go. Now I don't have to worry." And I'm like, "No."
That's not gonna work like that.
I'm like, there's too many last minute for that. You know, thank you for this, but no, I'm not gonna. That's not okay. So I already know what my rotation is going to be like next year, and I expressed that concern to him, and he was like, "Oh, well, don't worry about it. Your afternoon schools are joint classes, so for me, it's still going to work out. I'm still working fifth and sixth period, but one is third and fourth grade, one is fifth and sixth grade."
Yeah, okay, because that was what I was thinking about.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know all of your schools, but I've talked about, for example, a lot of my schools are small to where fifth and sixth are already together. So I only do one period, so it would be very easy to just do third and fourth together, fifth and sixth together, and have two classes like that.
Yeah.
But my problem with that, which, I mean, I obviously haven't finished my first year, so I don't see how it will go into the next year, is you're essentially getting fifth graders who do the exact same thing in sixth. Like, when you're teaching fifth, I mean, I get that it's different because in fifth grade, it's kind of like they don't have to be perfect at it yet because they'll get another year of the practice.
Right.
But I'm also, I mean, again, like I said, I haven't experienced this, so I don't know how they're going to react. But I feel like some students that I can think of just won't take sixth grade seriously now because they're like, well, I've already done all this. It doesn't matter.
I'm a bit, well, actually, it's actually, I think, going to be the opposite,
Really?
to be quite honest, because what essentially is happening from what I've heard is they're going to take the level of English that they have right now and shift everything down a grade.
Okay.
So our sixth grade are now going to be learning basically middle school first year student material.
Wow.
And so on and so forth. So the fifth grade is going to learn sixth grade material and so on and so forth. So I think even the junior high, our level of English is supposed to rise as far as what the curriculum entails. Okay. So I kind of feel bad for our fifth graders because they're going to go into a sixth grade year that's going to be textbook and curriculum based on the assumption that they had a fifth year, but the fifth year is not the same level that they're going to be expected to have. Okay. So I feel like it's going to be a little bit like we're throwing them in the deep end and expecting them to swim.
Yeah. Which tends to be a common thing in Japan.
Yeah.
There's a lot of just do it.
It's going to be, I feel like if anything, at least with this generation of sixth graders, I feel like they might get a little bit discouraged with English because it's just going to rapidly change from fun and games to like, okay, we're learning grammar and writing and everything. I think it might be a bit difficult for fifth graders.
Because that's something to state. I mean, I've talked to my parents about it, but predominantly elementary school for us is just games. Because you're there once a week.
Yeah.
For a 45-minute class. And so it's predominantly games with elementary, and I think next year is going to be a real gut punch to these kids because it's not going to be like that. But you've actually seen, or man, I think you've seen the new books.
I've glanced at the textbooks. Yeah, our new textbooks are going to be We Try and We Can, I believe. So I don't know what the third and fourth grade books are going to be like. I've heard that they're essentially going to get the newer version of Hi Friends and do that.
Okay. I like Hi Friends. I think it's good.
Unless I'm thinking of like We Try is going to be like year 1, year 2. We Can be year 1, year 2. I think might be the way that they're going to go. But one of my teachers printed out like a PDF file of the book, and I got to look at some of the stuff that we're going to do next year, and it is definitely different.
Do they have the chants? Everyone's favorite chants.
Everyone's favorite, the chants.
Yeah.
I don't think they do, or if they do, they've been changed. I know for one thing that like everybody's ecstatic about, Momotaro is gone. Oh, there's no Momotaro anymore.
Yeah.
In the textbook.
That's the worst, just because, as I've told you, like they want you to give like an English equivalent, and that's like the hardest thing to do.
It's one of the hardest lessons we get because it's essentially a very common Japanese folk tale that they've translated into very simple English.
Super simple English.
And the thing that I hate too, that I really hope that the CDs get updated because I do not like the voice acting on the CDs.
No, the voice acting. All right, so if you guys have some free time, try to find some Hi Friends audios because they are the most agonizing things to listen to. And I don't mean that as like a bash on the company.
No, but I cringe every time, especially because I'm like, okay, you're teaching English to Japanese students, and granted, most Americans, most foreigners, they're not going to have the proper accent for Japanese, but the kids don't need, like, they'll find out eventually, but like it I cringe so much because they pronounce the names so horribly.
Yeah.
And it mostly comes from having like experience studying Japanese and
Right.
knowing what it's supposed to sound like, and to hear like Hikaru and it's just cringeworthy.
It really does hurt. But the other thing that really gets me with those tapes is, to me, they over enunciate everything.
They do.
It's really, really annoying because no one does that in real life. And also, just like, those chants can be brutal. We listened to one the other day, and I had trouble keeping up
fast.
with it. They are ridiculously fast.
Yeah,
it's
really fast nonsense because I get that they're trying to do the grammar point, but it just sometimes, I think, to me, doesn't make sense in the sentence form.
And not to bash them, but from someone with a musical background, they're never on beat. It is like, musically, it is the worst thing I've ever heard.
No. And I know that, like, at least for me, sometimes, at least when I'm teaching the phrases to the kids, you do get some sentences that they have like a natural cadence to it. Yes. So as opposed to the chants, when I'm teaching that question to the kids, I break it up that way and do it as a sort of, not quite a chant, but as like, where do you want to go? Kind of give it that breakdown, flow pattern for them so that they can hear that and do it the same way.
Yeah, similarly, if I hate the chants, which is a lot of the chants.
Quite often.
We'll, especially for vocab, we'll just do where I say it, they say it, and then we like clap 4 times to kind of like, again, just to give it a little flow, just to get something to where they can remember it in their head and stuff like that. But yeah, I really hope the new books are better. Again, this is not a bash on the company.
No.
Like, I understand, like, it's difficult to do anything like this, but
for sure,
it's really when it's something that you have to listen to every week.
Yeah, and not just I was gonna say just not just every week, but like 6 times a week.
Yeah, it gets rough.
For sure. But the new textbooks, they definitely have, which is something that I love, they definitely have more English in them. Because right now, because our textbooks and our current curriculum is mainly games, that means that for a majority of the textbook, it's a picture book, essentially. And I hate that because we're trying to teach them English and there's no actual, like, they might not be able to read it, but there's no physical word for them to maybe guess what the word is. Right. So, like, if they've got their flashcards at home and they're trying to practice, all they see is a picture of a peach. Yeah. But if they don't remember that Momo is peach, then it doesn't help them.
Yeah, and going off that, I think what really bothers, and it doesn't bother me, like, I understood, again, it came from good intention, but one of the teachers that I work with told the students to just, like, write them down, and it's like, that's good, but that's assuming that the kids can write correct English, and again, that they even know the word in general.
And like, I get a mix as well, where I've had kids that they did that in the textbook. We were going over vocabulary, and they start writing in their textbook, but they start writing the katakana English for it, and the teacher got mad at them and told them, stop writing. That's the wrong pronunciation, stop writing. And so he didn't want them to write in the textbook because it was katakana English versus natural English, and he wanted, and I get that idea of natural English, correct pronunciation, but at the same time I'm like, but that helps the kid remember a little bit. So that bothered me.
Well, and going off that, I think, which I wanted to ask you here in a second, like pronunciation stuff, what's been like a difficult letter, but before I do that, that's something that bothers me because that's just natural. Like you were saying, when somebody who's American or from England or from Australia or whatever studies Japanese, it's gonna be, I mean, you can get a good pronunciation, a good sound
takes
pretty native
practice,
but everyone's gonna have an accent. I mean, even to you, maybe I have an accent just from being from Indiana and you're not. Like, that's just inevitable. And so to get frustrated with somebody, I mean, I guess I understand the teacher's perspective, but
like I said, it's not that, like, I'm completely bashing. I get the teacher's perspective, but at the same time,
to ask a 6th grader, to ask an elementary student,
no, it wasn't 6th, it was 5th grade.
Oh yeah, well, even worse, to ask a 5th grader to have perfect pronunciations, a bit ridiculous.
Or to not take some kind of memo at least to help, because and I couldn't help but think back that, like, you know what, I know what he's trying to do, but my junior high kids still do that, where they'll write the katakana English.
Yeah, well, because my big thing, and I think I've told you before, or maybe it was Mono Sensei, but as long as, so the whole point of communication is so that the native speaker can understand you. Right. So even if there's an accent, as long as I understood what you said, the mission was accomplished. You did what you needed to do. The accent's not that big of a deal. Right. But on the discussion of accents and pronunciation, I think a common misconception is that L and R are the hardest things for Japanese people to master. What has been difficult? Is that the case for you?
I find that it is.
Really? It's not been that for me.
Really,
Yeah.
I get a lot of and it's really difficult, especially now that we're going to be moving in the textbook. We're moving on to food.
Yeah.
So I get a lot of kids that say curry and lice. And they say lice instead of rice. And so I have to stop for a moment and be like, okay, kids, it's not lice, it's rice.
Yeah, lice is a very different thing.
It's extremely right. And it's so funny because I love it because I do it in a way where the kids start laughing.
Right.
They get the joke, but I'm like, you need to make sure you say R, because if you say, and I explained to them, if you say I like lice, you're saying I like lice, not rice.
Yeah.
And so that is funny, but I think it's that one and TH. I get so many of, what day is it? It's Saturday.
Yeah.
Instead of Thursday, and they can't do the T. So math, Thursday, all those kinds of three.
Oh, that one's a killer.
It's the TH I think is the most difficult that the kids face.
To explain to people, the reason why that tends to be the case, TH is not a sound here. In their language, there's not a TH sound. And the whole R and L thing, when they write the sounds of so it's difficult to explain, but there's technically a fourth alphabet you could say, like Romaji.
Oh, Romaji.
Some people say
Romaji.
And all that is the sounds of the words written with English letters.
Right.
And when that's done, there's 5 characters, 5 letters in Japanese that are given the R.
Mm-hmm. And the L.
Yeah, but the thing is they're neither one of those sounds. It's a Japanese specific sound.
Yeah, it's more of like a weird glide combination between the two.
Instead of your tongue coming out like it does for an L, it stays behind your teeth and kind of hits the roof of your mouth, where it's very quick. I had a teacher explain to me it's similar to the sound that you make when you do butter, like the duh part there.
Butter. Yeah.
But even then, that's not perfect. That's more of just the motion your tongue does when you make the sound. So that's why they have difficulty with that. But the biggest difficulty I've faced is M and N.
That one is a tough one too.
Very and it gets to a point where they just start saying the katakana mu, like emu,
and enu.
Which I'm like, whatever. Like, it's a little better, I guess, but you need to drop the oo.
Yeah.
Because that's really all it is. It's M, and then don't say oo, and N, and don't say oo.
Yeah.
But for some reason, they can't do it.
That one's tough. We get a lot of lessons where I'm like, look at the way I make my mouth movement of M and N.
Yeah.
I actually also get issues with V and B.
Oh, yeah.
Because, again, that's another one. They don't have a V sound in the Japanese language. They have a B.
They do. When they see a V, they tend to make the bui.
Bui. Because they do have a B, but they don't have V.
No.
So they do this kind of glide into it to try and make a bui.
Yeah.
So I find that, like, most of these issues usually come up for me when we do the alphabet.
Yes.
So I will usually set aside B and V to have them practice the difference in the mouth, the R, the L, the M and N, and the what else? Oh, G and J is difficult sometimes because they can't. They make the same sound for the Japanese kid for the language, and so they're just like G and J and Z. Those kind of similar pronunciations are difficult sometimes. I kind of stick with just
letting a lot of my students already know Z.
Yeah.
So I just kind of let them stick with that because it's not wrong. It's not common in America. So I'm like, if that's what you know, Z's fine.
Right.
Like, I know what you mean when you say Z.
Right. And I tell my kids the same too. And I'm just like, just be aware that I'm going to say Z because that's what I'm familiar with.
Right. Yeah. Also, I have 2 more questions and we're almost at the hour mark. So I want to try to fly through them real quick.
Right.
But on the topic of the alphabet, learning the new alphabet they do here. If you know what I'm talking about. Just the song, how the song's different, because you don't do LMNOP real quick. It's LMNOPQRSTUVWXYZ. It's really weird. It's really bizarre.
It's weird, though, because you get used to it.
Yeah.
You've gotten used to it. My favorite, actually, for that one, I do the chants for that one, because the chants are fun in that one, because you break it up. They have it where you break up the pattern. You go, I think, like A to H. And so it's like that set. So you do like A, B, C, D, E, F, G. and then you break it up. You go A B C A B C D E F G, and the kids
that's cool.
love it.
That one's really fun.
It's so much fun, and so the kids really like it, especially because I try and get them to do faster and faster and faster, and they just start stumbling over the letters.
That's awesome.
But they have a fun time with that one.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I'll be honest, I actually forgot one of the two questions I had left, so this is great because I can finish off with this last question.
Okay.
Which I feel like is a good departing question.
All right.
As somebody who was an alternate and went through the stress that you went through, what is some advice or words of encouragement you would give? Because if people don't know, as we talked about, interviews are kind of wrapping up back in America.
Yeah, they are.
So in the next couple months, people will start hearing back if they're shortlisted, alternate, or didn't get it.
Right.
So I guess what are some words of advice or encouragement you have for these people?
Yeah. And actually, we have something kind of branching off, but we have a situation this year where we had somebody who came to Japan. They started to get settled in town, didn't like it and went home. Yeah. And had to call in an alternate. And so that alternate came in like maybe 2 or 3 months into the contract. Yeah. So the biggest thing is kind of the way I had felt was it's not a no. Yeah. That's the biggest takeaway. It's not a no, because there's the 3 options. Yeah, you didn't get a yes, but you also didn't get a no. Yeah. So I think just to keep that positive spin, you do still want to branch out, look for other work, try and find, other work, other jobs. But just don't give up hope. It's not, a completely lost cause. Like I said, I found out, I was maybe a bit lucky in that I found out within a month and a half or so after the fact, after I got my results. But you could be the case like one of our other fellow jets that just moved in 3 or 4 months into the program.
I believe I know who you're talking about, but I don't think I met them until what was it? The thing that we did.
She came to the exchange, I think.
Yes.
Yeah, she came to the exchange. It was somebody that
But I also met her when we did what was it? Where we stayed for one night and they had the books to. I'm talking about.
Our development conference. Yeah, the development conference. Actually, that was about the same time she came. She had only, she had only come to Japan maybe 2 or 3 weeks, 2 weeks before that.
That's crazy.
Yeah, so she came in, and I think that's essentially what they tell you is that you could get picked up between then and September. Was I think the latest date they told me, and I'm like, oh my God. That's a long wait. Yeah, it's a long wait. But again, don't give up, because for whatever reason, there are people I'm not sure why my original, jet decided not to contract. Mm-hmm. It could be that, they had a better job offer somewhere else. They just decided it wasn't their thing. Yeah. They maybe looked at Shimane and said no thank you, but that's their loss. Yeah. That's definitely their loss. So just kind of stay positive, and that's the biggest. It's not a no. No, that's I think that's a great thing to end it on. It's not a no. Yeah, that's lovely advice, and I hope we get some new lovely people to come to Shimane to visit with. But thanks again for being on here. I hope you had a good time. I enjoyed getting some information out of you. Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I'm sure I'll talk to you in a couple days. Yeah. All right, everybody. Sure. Thanks for watching. Right. If you have any questions, feel free to leave them in the comments. Subscribe if you like the podcast, or if you like any other videos that I do. And with that, I bid you adieu. All right, see ya. Yeah. Wonderful.